Hey everyone, just a reminder to subscribe. Hello everyone, and welcome to The Darkest Hour. I'm your host, Amanda Jane. Tonight, we aren't talking about monsters that announce themselves. We're talking about moments when something feels off, not loud enough to name or obvious enough to escape. These are stories where fear doesn't arrive all at once. It settles in quietly. It waits for isolation, for exhaustion. The moment where you stop trusting your own instincts. Sometimes the room changes without making a sound. A voice feels borrowed, and the quiet lasts just a little too long. What comes next doesn't need to announce itself. It only needs you. Tired, alone, uncertain. These stories aren't about things breaking in. They're about what happens when something realizes it's already welcome. So, let's get started, shall we? I've gone back and forth about posting this for years. Part of me still worries that if I put it into words, it'll somehow wake something up again, but it's been almost 16 years and I'm still thinking about it, still having moments where I wake up suddenly with my heart racing and no clear reason why. So here it is. When this happened, I was in my early 20s. My boyfriend at the time had just gotten out of prison after serving time for dealing drugs. Nothing violent. He wasn't a dangerous person. He'd gotten involved with the wrong people and made some bad decisions, and prison changed him, but I expected that. Anyone would come back different. We were both sober when he got out. That part matters to me because I know how easy it would be to explain everything away otherwise. The first few weeks after he came home were, cautious. He was quieter than I remembered, more withdrawn, but I assumed that was just him adjusting. He had trouble sleeping. He startled easily. Sometimes I'd wake up in the middle of the night and I'd find him sitting in the dark living room, not watching TV, just staring. It felt unsettling, but not scary yet. That came later. The changes weren't constant, but somehow that's what made it worse. Most of the time, he was still him, apologetic, gentle, trying, but sometimes it was like something had switched. His mood would just turn flat and heavy. He'd snap over nothing, say things that didn't line up with what we were talking about, and then later swear that he never said them. I started walking on eggshells without realizing it. The first time I woke up thinking he was pulling my hair, I didn't even open my eyes right away. I just felt it, a sharp tug at the crown of my head, like fingers threaded into my hair and yanked. I jolted awake and whispered his name, already bracing myself for an argument. He was asleep, facing the other direction, both hands under his pillow. I told myself that it had to have been a dream, but it happened again, and another time. It wasn't every night, just often enough that I started dreading sleep. Sometimes it felt like a quick pull. Other times it was slower, like something dragging through my hair, testing how much it could take. Every time he denied it, and I believed him because I wanted to, and because I couldn't explain how he could be doing it without waking himself up. Either way, the tension between us escalated fast after that. We fought constantly, but never really about the hair pulling. It was about everything else. The way his voice would change when he was angry, not louder, but deeper somehow. The way that he'd look at me like he didn't recognize me. The way the room felt heavier, when he was in a bad mood. Eventually, I couldn't take it anymore. I asked him to move out. It really wasn't some explosive breakup. It was exhausted and sad and full of apologies. He cried. Then, at some point, he just shut down. Said maybe it was for the best. He packed his things and left without another word. I remember feeling relief when the door closed behind him. That relief lasted for one night. The second night, I was alone, and I woke up gasping for air. It felt like my hair was being yanked hard enough to pull my head off of the pillow. I screamed, and I sat up, heart pounding, the apartment completely silent. No one there, no explanation. After that, things got harder for me. The pulling didn't stop. It became more aggressive. I started waking up with the sensation that something was leaning over me while I slept, pressing me down. My dreams even started to change. I kept dreaming I was underwater, trying to scream and only swallowing darkness as I did. I'd wake up choking, my chest burning like I hadn't breathed in minutes. And then the bedroom door, it started opening itself, slamming itself. Always when I was alone, always when I was already on edge. I barely slept at that point. The night everything finally crossed the line for me was when I woke up in complete silence. It wasn't the normal silence. It was like the world was gone. I reached up to touch my hair, and I felt a smooth patch of scalp. A chunk of my hair was gone, not tangled or broken off. Gone. I expected to see it lying on the floor next to the bed, somewhere in the sheets. But I didn't find any hair. I completely lost it. I don't remember much after that besides crying on my bathroom floor, shaking so hard I couldn't stand. That was the moment I realized that whatever had been happening wasn't just stress and trauma or even my ex. It's something that stayed. I believe that he brought it back with him, but he didn't take it when he left. I moved out. I left some furniture behind even. Most things I didn't care about. I didn't tell them anything when I moved out. Obviously, I was afraid that if I said it out loud, they would think I was crazy, but also that it would follow me. It didn't follow me. Not like that. I rebuilt my life, stayed sober, slept again. So yeah, I don't know for sure if my ex brought something home with him, or if it was already there, just waiting for someone vulnerable enough to notice. But I do know that whatever it was didn't leave when he did. I'm just glad I got away too. Just to be clear, I'm not someone who goes around looking for paranormal. I don't mess with occult stuff, and I don't collect haunted objects or believe that every old thing has a spirit attached to it. If anything, I'm the person who tries to rationalize too much. That's probably why this took me so long to accept it for what it was. This happened about 12 years ago, not long after my grandmother died. We were close, closer than I realized until she was gone. She raised me for a few years when my parents were struggling, and a lot of my memories of childhood are tied to her house. When we cleaned it out after her death, most of the furniture was sold or donated. I didn't really want much, just a few keepsakes. But there was one thing that I kept coming back to, a chair that sat in the corner of her living room. It was old, solid wood, dark finish, high back with worn armrests, polished smooth by decades of use. That chair was hers. She sat in it every evening without fail, reading, watching TV, just sitting quietly with her hands folded. I don't remember ever seeing anyone else sit in it. Something about leaving it behind felt wrong, so I brought it home. And at first, it was just a nice chair to remind me of her. I put it in my bedroom near the window. I told myself that it made sense and that it was comforting, familiar, a connection to her. I'd sit in it sometimes before bed, scrolling on my phone or reading, thinking about nothing in particular. And the first strange thing, it didn't feel strange at all. I woke up one morning sitting in the chair. I remember blinking in confusion, my neck stiff, my legs numb, trying to figure out how long I'd been there. I assumed I'd gotten up in the night and sat down without remembering. I was under a lot of emotional stress at the time, grieving, not sleeping well. It happened again a few nights later, and then again, and again. Always the same way, waking up upright, hands resting in my lap, feet flat on the floor, not slumped, not uncomfortable, almost arranged. Each morning after, my body felt heavier, not sore exactly, just weighed down, like gravity was pulling harder than it should. I started waking up exhausted. Even times when I remembered sleeping through the night. I told myself that grief does strange things to the body, and it does. But what bothered me more was how natural it started to feel. I stopped questioning waking up in the chair. I'd just sigh, stand up slowly, and go about my morning. That realization that I accepted it so quickly, it still gets my stomach in knots. The dreams started around that time, the acceptance. They weren't nightmares, that's important. They were quiet. I dreamed that I was sitting somewhere dark and familiar, listening to someone speak just behind me, not loudly or threatening, more like instructing, reminding. I never remembered the words when I woke up, just the feeling that I'd agreed to something. I began to feel protective of the chair, and that's another thing that I didn't notice right away. Friends would come over and comment on it, how old it looked, how uncomfortable it probably was. Once, someone jokingly asked if they could sit in it. The reaction that rose up in me was instant and visceral. I said no, too quickly, too sharply. They laughed it off, but I remember my heart racing and my hands sweating. I told myself I just didn't want it damaged, that it was sentimental. But why did I react that way? But deep down, it felt more like a requirement than a preference. The chair was not for them. The mornings, they kept getting worse. My limbs felt sluggish. My chest was truly tight, like I'd spent the night bracing myself without realizing it. I started noticing faint pressure marks on my arms where they rested on the chair's wooden supports. One morning, I woke up and I couldn't stand right away. It was like something was pressing down on my shoulders and holding me in place, securing me not violently but patiently. I sat there, breathing shallowly, waiting for the feeling to pass, and eventually it did. That was the first time I thought, this isn't normal. The breaking point was probably a few weeks later. I don't remember falling asleep at all that night. I just remember waking up and realizing that the chair had been turned slightly. It wasn't facing the window anymore. It was facing the bed. I was sitting in it, staring at the place where my body should have been. And that's when the thought finally surfaced. This isn't where I rest. This is where something waits. I stood up slowly, every movement feeling as though it might break my limbs, and I dragged the chair out of the room. It was heavier than it had been, which is likely because I was so weak. I put it in the garage. It was a heavy trip, but it was worth it. It was like the moment I put it out there and said, no more, no thank you. That night, the dream stopped immediately as I slept in my own bed. The heaviness faded over the next few days, and once I got rid of the chair entirely, the feeling was gone. I started waking up feeling like myself again, like my body belonged to me. I didn't sell that chair or donate it. I ended up throwing it away. There was something about passing it along to someone that felt irresponsible, but also it felt like my grandmother was connected to that chair. And I don't mean that in a way to say that I'm going to get rid of my grandmother. I just mean that that was her chair. And I think that it should go with her. And maybe that's the entire reason that the chair never really settled with me to begin with. At least I'd like to think so. Otherwise, it's just like my grandma had a cursed chair, and I don't know how to feel about that. When I was a kid, my sister and I were the only girls on our road. It was a long stretch of rural land, 5 acres of trees, garden beds, and open field. And the neighborhood kids were almost all boys. We played outside constantly. We knew who belonged there. That's why it felt strange the moment the 2 girls appeared. They came walking up the driveway like they already knew where they were going. One was older, around my age, maybe 12. And the other was much smaller, no more than 6. The older girl did all the talking. She said that they were cousins of a family who lived down the road. They said that someone had told them that 2 girls lived here and that we might want to play. I remember thinking her explanation sounded rehearsed, like she'd practiced it. She smiled when she spoke, but it never quite reached her eyes. I can see that now. She suggested that we play house. That part felt normal enough, so we agreed, and she immediately started assigning roles, directing everything like she'd already decided how the game would go. My sister and the younger girl were sent off to make food, which meant mud pies and flowers. The older girl stayed with me to build the house. She chose a tree near the edge of the yard, tall, old, and solid. Without hesitation, she reached up and grabbed a branch. At first, I thought she was joking. Then she pulled. The sound was loud, sharp, violent, like a gunshot echoing through the woods. The branch snapped clean off and hit the ground with a heavy thud. This wasn't a small limb. It was thick, a proper branch thicker than my leg. She dragged it down and laid it out flat, smiling, and said casually, "That can be one of the beds." My stomach dropped. I remember standing there, trying to understand what I was seeing. She was thin, scrawny even. No muscles, no strain in her face. She hadn't braced herself or struggled at all. She hadn't even looked surprised by her own strength. She reached up again, another crack, another branch. And that's when I felt fear. Not the kind that makes you scream, but the kind that tells you that something's wrong, on a level that you don't have words for yet. My dad heard it too. He was across the field, working in the garden. He loved his trees, protecting them like they were the living family. And when he heard the branches breaking, he came running, shouting for her to stop. She didn't. She kept pulling. My sister and the younger girl had stopped playing. The little one started crying, clutching her muddy hands to her chest. I noticed that the older girl's posture had changed. Her shoulders were square in a way that didn't look natural for a child. Her movements were too controlled and strange. My dad finally reached us, breathless and angry, and yelled again for her to stop. She turned to face him, and I swear, just for a second, her face wasn't right. Her eyes looked darker and deeper, like the light had fallen out of them entirely. Her mouth smiled, but her lips didn't move the way they should. Blink and you'd miss it, kind of subtle, but I saw it. My dad shouted, "In Jesus' name, stop." The girl tilted her head, and when she spoke, the voice that came out, it didn't belong to a child. It was low, flat, like it had been pushed through her throat from somewhere else. "We do not worship your God." Everything went quiet. The birds, the wind, even the crying stopped. My dad didn't hesitate. He rebuked immediately, commanding whatever was there to leave, to get off the property in Jesus' name. His voice shook, but not with fear. It was authority. The girl's expression snapped hard, like a switch being flipped. She grabbed the younger girl's hand and took off running like she was being chased. They tore down the long driveway faster than made any sense, nearly dragging the little girl behind her. My dad prayed the entire time, his words tumbling out as if he was afraid to stop speaking. At the edge of the property, where the driveway met the dirt road, the older girl stopped. She turned and looked back at us. That look, I still can't fully describe it. It wasn't anger. It was cold. Something old and cold. Like we'd interrupted something that she wanted us to know, and she'd remember it. Then she ran again. Faster than should be possible. My dad pulled my sister and me into his arms so hard it almost hurt. He kept thanking God over and over, his voice breaking. When he finally let go, he walked back to the tree. The branches lay where she'd dropped them. He tried to lift one. He couldn't. Not easily. His face changed when he realized how heavy they were. My dad was over 6 feet tall. Strong. Practical. Not a man given to exaggerations. He didn't say much after that. That wasn't the last strange thing I experienced growing up, but it was the first time I understood that sometimes evil doesn't announce itself with horns and fire. Sometimes it looks like a child. And I think sometimes, if you're paying close enough attention, you can see it, just for a moment, before it realizes you're watching. It's subtle, like the eyes, or the way their mouth moves, something, but it's there. It's odd, and sometimes I wonder if it's something that only children can see. I've never seen anything like it since, so I can't know for sure. I had a hard time getting people to believe me about the scariest thing that ever happened in my life, and so I stopped trying. Whatever was happening in my old house only escalated when no one else was there to see it. And that's the part that I just still can't get past. This happened over 15 years ago. I was living alone for the first time after a long relationship ended. There was nothing unusual about the house itself. It was a small rental, older but well-maintained, no known history or creepy basement. There were no weird neighbors warning me about it. It was just a rental. And the first few weeks were as normal as the place itself. But then things started to undeniably happen. The kind of stuff that you can brush off without thinking too hard about it, but when you have the time to think, you can't ignore. Cabinet doors would open when you swear you'd close them. Objects not where you left them. The occasional unexplained noise at night. I chalked all of that up to the house settling or me being anxious after the breakup. The reality, not likely at all. I don't leave cabinet doors open. I'm not absent-minded in that way. I've lived with my sister, and we're not the same. But I was under a lot of stress at the time, and I guess that matters. The first time something violent happened, I was completely alone. I was in the kitchen making dinner when a plate flew off the counter and shattered against the wall behind me. It didn't slide, it was thrown. I froze, staring at the shards on the floor. I remember actually laughing out loud because my brain refused to process it as anything else. I told myself that I must have bumped the counter. That wasn't even possible, but it was like I needed to believe it. When friends came over later that week, nothing happened. The house felt relatively quiet, almost pleasant. And that pattern, it continued. It was like any time that someone else was there, friends, family, even repair workers, the house behaved, and the air literally felt lighter. The noises stopped, and, well, it was almost embarrassing. I worried that people would think that I was imagining things, but when I was alone, that's when it started pushing. It wasn't constant, it was timed. A door slamming hard enough to rattle the walls while I showered. A bookshelf tipping forward when I walked past. I'd find bruises on my arms and legs and have no memory of hitting anything. Still, I didn't think entity. I thought anxiety, trauma, stress. The realization came slowly, through repetition. One night I had 2 friends over watching movies. At one point, one of them joked that the house felt too quiet, like it was listening. I laughed it off because what a weird thing to say, but I remember feeling almost defensive, like the house had been insulted. I didn't want to feel that way against my friend, but I did. The second they left, something slammed upstairs. It was a hard slam. I stood at the bottom of the staircase staring up, and I said out loud that it wasn't funny. The next slam came immediately after, and louder. I slept at a friend's house that night. When I came back the next day, the house felt normal again, but only for a little bit. The worst incidents always happened late at night, when I was exhausted and vulnerable. It felt like whatever it was had waited until I was already on edge, and then escalated just enough to scare me, but not enough to leave obvious evidence. I really felt like its purpose was to make me feel like I was going crazy. Even if I called someone while something was happening, it would stop. Mid-sentence, mid-noise, mid-incident. Once a lamp fell over so violently that the bulb shattered. I grabbed my phone and called my sister, shaking. While I was still explaining what had happened, the house went completely silent. No more shaking or movement. I mean, talk about feeling like you were being watched. It's like it knew everything that was going on, anytime I was alone and when I wasn't. Things really did escalate after that bulb incident. I'd wake up at night feeling pressure on my chest, like someone was leaning into me, holding me down just long enough to make breathing hard. The moment I managed to sit up or reach for my phone, it would stop. I stopped inviting people over because nothing ever happened when they were there, and I didn't want to feel crazy explaining it anymore. But it was all I could think about, talk about. But that isolation made everything worse. The next and final time was on a night that I didn't think I was going to survive emotionally. I was alone, no calls planned, and no one expecting to hear from me. I was lying in bed when something yanked the covers off of me so hard they hit the wall. Before I could react, the bedroom door slammed shut on its own. Then the closet door opened, slowly. Somehow I couldn't find my voice. I screamed not out loud, but inside my head. I couldn't make sound. My chest felt locked, like my body didn't belong to me. I remember thinking very clearly, it knows that no one's coming. That thought broke something in me. I reached for my phone and started dialing without looking. The second the call connected, everything stopped. The doors, the pressure, the air. I slept with the lights on until morning. I moved out several weeks after that. I couldn't bring myself to tell the landlord why. I didn't try to cleanse the place or confront it. I just left, and I didn't care about my deposit. Nothing like it has happened since, but I still think about it all the time. Part of me is incredibly relieved that I'm not crazy, but the other part of me is just unsettled, knowing that whatever this is, it exists, and I don't know why. I didn't understand what I was hearing at the time. That feels important to say. When you're a kid, you don't look for patterns. You just accept that some things are strange and move on. It took years and distance and a lot of hindsight before I realized that what happened with my sister followed rules. Very specific ones. My sister is 3 years younger than me. We shared a room growing up. Our house wasn't violent or overtly abusive, but it wasn't warm either. There was a lot of absence, a lot of silence. You learned early not to need much. The first time it happened, we had a friend over for a sleepover. We were still young, elementary school age, sleeping bags on the floor, whispering until we drifted off. I woke up for no reason to my sister sitting straight up in her bed. She wasn't moving, not swaying or twitching the way people do when they're asleep. She sat like someone waiting to be addressed. She started speaking in a voice that didn't sound like hers. It was older, settled, like it knew exactly where it was, but it wasn't hers. She said, "You weren't supposed to wake up yet." I remember feeling embarrassed, more than scared, like I'd broken some kind of etiquette. I whispered her name, and she didn't react. Our friend shifted in her sleeping bag and let out a small noise. My sister turned her head toward her and said, "She's not part of this." Then she lay back down and went still. In the morning, she didn't remember anything. That was another rule or something. She never did remember. We told her about it once, laughing nervously, and she shrugged it off like it was nothing. Our friend, once she saw the same thing, she never slept over again. It happened again a few years later, in a different house with a different friend. Same timing, same posture, same tone. Always in the middle of the night. Always when someone new was there. Didn't ever seem to be when it was just us two. She never spoke nonsense or rambled. Every sentence sounded like it belonged to something already in progress. Once she said, "That's close enough." Another time, "He doesn't like to be interrupted." And once, very calmly, "You're listening wrong." If someone shifted or stirred, her voice would sharpen. If someone spoke, it stopped completely. That seemed to be another rule. It didn't compete for the space. By the time we were older, I dreaded sleepovers. I couldn't explain why without sounding dramatic, so I just stuck with, "I don't sleep well with others." I just knew that when the house was full of others breathing, something else paid attention, and it seemed to react through my sister. The last time it happened, we were actually teenagers. We had 2 friends staying over. I woke up to the same familiar stillness, like the air had been pressed flat. My sister sat up. She didn't speak right away. She just tilted her head, listening, as if waiting for a cue. Then she said, "This one isn't supposed to hear it yet." One of our friends shifted in her sleep. My sister's voice tightened. "If she wakes up, you'll ruin it." That's when I spoke. I told her to stop. I said it the way you talk to someone who's breaking a rule you don't understand. She turned toward me and smiled. It wasn't my sister's smile, just like it wasn't her voice. She said, "You weren't meant to notice." Then she laid back down. She never remembered any of it. After that, the sleepovers faded out. They just stopped. Life moved on. We grew up. Years later, as adults, it came up in passing. I mentioned her sleep-talking, expecting a laugh. She didn't laugh. She said she'd always known when it happened. Not consciously, but in her body. She said that she woke up more tired on those nights, like she'd been used for something. She said she always felt disappointment when friends left early, like she'd failed at something she couldn't understand. That's when I finally understood something. It didn't speak unless there were witnesses. It didn't want attention, it just needed presence. It stopped the moment it was challenged. And it borrowed her voice because hers was available, I assume. It never followed her into adulthood, at least not in ways that she noticed. I'd like to think that that's the case, that I told it to leave or stop and it did. Either way, it's always creeped me out. Dear new neighbors, greetings, we're the Wagner family. As some of you may have noticed, all those moving trucks blocking up Opal Street last month, we're in the small brick house at the end of the block. We're looking forward to meeting everyone in person at the next HOA meeting. That being said, I was hoping someone on here could tell me a little bit more about Opal Street. Part of our appeal for the neighborhood was because it's one of the last streets that hadn't been touched by modern architecture. I'm sure our house in particular is one of the oldest, assuming they built outward from the cemetery line. Please feel free to correct me if I'm wrong on that. This brings me to my first question. I noticed a few of the houses next to ours have small plaques outside their house that says National Register of Historical Places. Our house has to be as old as the other two houses that sport the award. Is it worth registering for? And if so, how would I go about that? Also, the cemetery. We haven't had the chance to take a walk and really explore the beauty that this area has to offer, so I'm not sure how far the graves stretch. But every night, we can see a light patrolling around in there. We're all for security and safety. I'm just wondering if the cemetery's upkeep was paid for by our HOA funds, or if there were any special rules regarding decorating the fence if it lines your yard. Thank you for your time, and we'll see you all at the first Tuesday of next month. Sincerely, the Wagners. Reply. Dear Wagner family, I hope you don't mind me reaching out directly. It's unlikely you'll receive a comment on the community page. It was nice to see a new family around here. My name is Eric. I'm on the HOA board, and I've lived on this block for almost 6 years now. To answer your first question, if I'm not mistaken, your property did at one point have an NRHP plaque, but it was removed due to the loss of integrity. They had to do a lot of renovations before your house was ready to sell again, and I'm pretty sure my brother's landscaping crew did the work. Your realtor should have told you that the kitchen area was completely replaced, and I'm hoping that they told you why it had to be renovated. If they hadn't, long story short, the previous tenants had a pretty gruesome incident that we don't need to go further into. But congratulations, for better or for worse, your kitchen has brand new everything. If you're really curious, I'll tell you at the HOA meeting next week, next Tuesday. I don't know who checks this, and I really wouldn't want a child accidentally reading it. There's only a few people that attend our meetings, but they're the good ones. They'll be elated to have another normal family in the neighborhood. Saying normal sounds bad. Let's just say that most folks in this neighborhood like to keep to their own. Don't take it personal if you get some cold shoulders. This next. I feel like I should mention, but this is in no way meant to freak you out because it sounds worse than it really is, so please keep that in mind. But it will explain a lot about the vibe of this quiet stretch of houses. I'm pretty sure this was the late 70s, but there were whispers of a cult out here. I heard that we're smack dab in the intersection of two ley lines, and if you don't know what they are, it's a pseudo-hippie way of saying the energy's trippy around here and weird things happen. I don't know how much I buy into that personally, but what I do know is that before urban encroachment made its way to this area, all of these houses were part of a commune, and most of the members still live in the neighborhood and practice their rituals in the cemetery. This brings me to answering your other questions. No, the HOA has no control of the cemetery. It belongs to the church on the other side of the hill, and I wouldn't decorate the fence. I found it's best not to attract unnecessary attention from them. You should ask around at our meeting. People will be happy to share stories of what they've seen. Another word of warning, if you have children, I consider homeschooling them or transferring them to another district. The cult members have influential jobs in this town. The teachers indoctrinate the children with their cultish beliefs and normalize their power over the community. Our neighborhood has virtually zero crime. None of our homes have ever been broken into. The police are vigilant when it comes to protecting the cemetery and surrounding homes. That's one of the perks of living here, compared to the statistics of our closest town in any direction. That being considered, any internal disruption that us residents have, the police will 100% of the time side with their brothers and sisters of the cult. Thankfully, though, again, we all tend to keep to our own around here, so quarrels are very few and far between, and for the most part avoidable. Recognize who they are. Do your best to ignore them. What someone told me when I first moved in, think of them like honeybees. They're a huge contributing part of our ecosystem here, and they're trying to avoid you way more than you'll try to avoid them. But if you go out of your way to disturb them, the hive will act together in order to relieve its tension. I can't express enough, though, how unlikely this is to happen. You'll quickly understand the do's and don'ts around here. Do make sure to put your trash and recycling out every Wednesday. Don't go poking around the graveyards or other places that you don't have legitimate reasons for being in. We have designated hiking trails if you're looking for cardio sessions. Do use those. Don't stray from the paths. The woods are vast and people have gone missing when they've wandered off. Wow, this was a long introduction, all to simply say that we look forward to meeting the Wagner gang next Tuesday at the HOA meeting. Address of the venue is at the bottom. Please bring all your questions there and we'll be happy to enlighten you on everything there is to know about this sleepy little neighborhood we share. Be well, Eric. Second reply. Do not trust Eric. Get an encrypted browser. Local IPs are monitored. Unsafe to correspond on this. Do not reply. Well, friends, it appears we've reached the end of tonight's episode. Thanks for joining me, whether it's your first time or you're a regular. Your support means the world over here. We've got brand new episodes every Friday night, and keep those eyes open for those deep sleep videos. Remember, subscribe, tap the bell, and you'll never miss a thing. Special thanks to the Darkest Hour channel members, Lori Tesdahl, Sara Marie, Robert Bailey, Coltdaddy Eagle, Mallory Dominguez, Kari Watkins, Pilar Guillot, Treden Wixson, Larry Hill, RIPLEY, Jojo Starcher, Mary Patrick, Debbie Lafreniere, Julie Bourdelais, Jennifer Beck, Marina Lachner, Make Hamilton Home, Evan Pratt, Mary Hineline, Katharine Yes.ImtherealKatie Isabelle, Landshark, Danielle Hecht, Mama P, Keziah Pietersen, Amber Baker, Khris Lauzon, Cara Gios, Marvin Allen, Forgotten Ruins TV, Raven Wolf, Carlos, Stacia Giletti, Nate Black, Jill Harper, Kathy Balkenbush, Cosmic Chick, Sierra Guerrero, Deanna Kuzma, Nathan Bremer, Demian Forrester, Nazi K, Angel Roman, Trisha Hardis, Sherry Gannon, Alexis Foster, On Pulse, Valerie Bates, Scott Horn, Kathy McGuire, Heather, Amber Burke, Antifa Lives, Eva Marie Push Lopez, Amanda Ramos, B-Rad, Daisy Cutter, Zombiecidal 9, Aim for Space, Gator Man, What's Going On Here 406, LSD 358, and Raven Neville. Big thanks to those who shared their stories, and a huge shout out to all of our patrons: Tracy S., Mary H., Tanya F., Tamra K., Monica L., Zoe Watt, Shelley B., Donald C., Marion T., Rat Girl, Alicia S., Aaron G., Nikki H., Mr. Revenant, Naz K., Brendan G., Paul T., Nicholas C., Tony P., Lizanne, Arlene F., Adrian, T.F. Parham, Jason G., Lori T., Bobo Jenkins, Rachel S., Linda W., Eric, Lynn Driftless, and Denise. If you want to support The Darkest Hour in other ways, consider joining our Patreon or becoming a channel member. Check out patreon.com/thedarkesthour or click the link in the description to learn more. Do you have stories like these? I'd love to share them. Send them to me, Amanda, darkesthour@gmail.com, or on the Darkest Hour subreddit, The Darkest Hour, YT. Stay spooky.